Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain, author of the international best-selling book called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And today on the show we have Jock Brocas. Jock is an evidential medium, author, and founding member of the ASSMPI, which stands for the American Society for Standards in Mediumship and Psychical Investigation. He is also the editor-in-chief of the Otherside Press and the developer of the Afterlife Connect Platform. Jock is the author of several books and has appeared on media throughout the world discussing the afterlife and the paranormal. Jock Brocas, a warm welcome to We Don't Die Radio.
It's a pleasure to be here, Sandra. It's lovely to meet you, and it's lovely to share with your audience, wherever they may be in the world.
Oh, yeah, that's just it. All over the world that we have found out. Wow. And I know you are someone who's already brought a smile to my face based on you sending me the picture in the kilt and all your...
Yeah, there's a story with that kilt. Yeah. It was a wedding that I was doing in Florida, and let me tell you, if anybody's ever worn a Scottish kilt before, it is not a good idea to wear one in Florida in the blistering humidity.
Wow. Enough said. Oh, that's great.
It was the fastest service I've ever done in my life.
Oh, that's super. Were you actually doing the service as the minister?
Yes, I was a minister and I was marrying a couple.
Oh, isn't that a beautiful thing? Well, it's nice to meet you. I've heard your name from many people and I've seen your books, and Sue Filer is a big fan of yours. I know you work with her. And yeah, and so it's just nice that we can finally connect.
It's lovely. It's lovely to connect, and I'm always happy to share what little knowledge and experience I have to help others on their path.
Yeah, and I know you have more than a little knowledge, and we get so used to hearing our own stories and living in our own skin that to someone who hasn't heard from us, it's a breath of fresh air. So how does your story begin into this fantastic world that you're in now?
Well, you know, it's probably quite strange because we have the old cliche, I think, Sandra, where everybody says, I was always like this when I was young.
I hear about that a lot, yes.
Yeah, well, I was always like this when I was, but I actually didn't really understand anything. And to be honest, my passion, I was brought up as a Catholic. My granny used to say that I was of the Heinz 57 variety. It was a little bit of a mixture of everything because my granny was a convert. My father was Protestant and also part of the Masonic Lodge. Wow. My mother was Roman Catholic. And then my uncle, who I was very, very, very close to, was a brother in the Redemptorist monastery. He was a monk and gave up his life for service to the monastery. So I think when I was younger, I had a very, very spiritual outlook, Sandra, and I wasn't your type of kid that liked to go out and play football and all that kind of stuff. I was kind of quite studious, and whenever I could spend time at the monastery, that's where I went. So I would say that a great deal in my youth was spent in a monastery and learning from monks and priests and nuns who were coming on retreats. And I seen a great side of life, you know, from that side. I would feed the poor, I would feed prisoners, I spent a great deal of time with Brother Pius, who would, you know, educate me on different things. So I had a passion for spirituality, and then of course as I moved on in life, I then wanted to, as I was growing up, I wanted to be a Catholic priest, you know, and while other people were reading comic books and things like that, you know, one of the first books that I ever read was The Vocation to the Priesthood by the Redemptorist publication. So even as a young boy, I was kind of drawn in that way, and it's a bit funny. I used to have my own altar in my bedroom, and I would hear mass and things like that.
Not funny.
But you know, the interesting things was that when I was in the monastery, I had experiences that I couldn't explain, and a great deal of Catholicism, I think, you know, and Catholic law and things I was getting taught weren't sitting with me as well as they probably should have with everybody else, you know. So I would question, I think, more than anything else. And I think my spirituality then kind of grew from that. And I always had that fundamental basis as a young man, and spending all my formative years kind of in the monastery and learning and going on. And then my first, you know, I got to know people that were exorcists, and you know, it was just an amazing foundation for me. I met nuns who were, you know, great singers, who were teachers, and I think I saw pretty much all aspects of life within the monastery, and albeit that was within the monastery and also in the public, you know, as the public would come up and then they would reach out to the community. So I had a good basis for it. But I couldn't tell you from then what a psychic was or what a medium was or anything like that, you know.
Right. What kind of experiences?
Oh, well, I remember one experience was, I think I shared this in the last interview, was I remember I used to have a weird fascination about being in the loft area, and it always felt haunted to me and scary. And I remember walking down the hallways, and you always thought in the monastery that all these religious artifacts and pictures were staring at you and judging you, you know?
Yes.
And it was quite a scary place, but it was just somewhere that I was constantly drawn to. And I remember in one evening, I kind of got up and I was going to the restroom, and I saw this monk, this priest, you know, down the hallway. I kind of waved and I was like, you know, hi, Father, you know, and nothing. There was not even any emotion or a wave back, nothing, and then just disappeared. So that was kind of quite upsetting for me. And I remember then speaking to the monks and the priest and the rector at the time and saying what I had saw, and that this priest hadn't, you know, even bothered about me and was quite ignorant until they actually one day, I think it was Brother Pius at the time or the rector, I can't remember which one, but they showed me this book, and the priest whom I had saw was one of the priests way back when they first took over that monastery in Scotland, which was really the latter end of the 17th century, and had well passed. And then I was then given this whole lecture about, you know, not dabbling, and maybe it was, you know, it was in my mind, and there was the negative side of things of the other side that I shouldn't dabble with, and I should always pray. And then I was, you know, from that day on, I think I was tied to my rosary beads, because you kind of, you know, they put the fear of death in you, basically.
Sure.
But then I had a lot more, you know, many other experiences from that, you know, just my intuition was very, very strong. And the funny thing was, even later in life, I would clairvoyantly see things, and I would also see like auric fields and colours and things around people, to the point that later in life I actually had LASIK laser surgery twice, because I was seeing these things, and it never really did anything for me. And I realised that what I was seeing was a spiritual type energy. So I think from not having that knowledge and going through, everything was a kind of piecemeal that came together. But if I had to be honest with my whole kind of upbringing, not so much on the Catholicism part, but the foundation was at the monastery, absolutely. Because I learned so much, and I studied not so much, you know, a great deal of religion, but I studied the lives of different saints, and I studied, you know, all different spiritual concepts, and I was way more advanced in my years. I should have been out playing with people and out, you know, running about darkly with other kids, but I never done that.
Well, somehow it's perfect to where you are. But I tell you, everything I've seen you do that I know of, it's all a passion for service, of being in service. And so that's probably the foundation you got so early.
Absolutely. I think I was thinking about this the other day, Sandra, you know, and I was thinking, I'm so dedicated to serving spirit and serving others. And I think it came from the very, very first time that Brother Pius took me outside with the big metal trolley, and I would stand as a young kid. I was only about 8, 9 years old, and I would feed the poor. And I remember it was like, is this what Jesus done? You know, is this what these people did back in the day, and Saint Alphonsus and, you know, St. Francis, and And I felt like I was kind of part of that culture. And so service to me has always been a number one priority right from that very first time that I put the soup ladle into the soup pot and served the poor.
Well, I really thank you for that, and for myself as well. Although the name of the show is We Don't Die, it's the title of my book, what's under it all is the hope to help people that are grieving and in pain. And I know you come from the same place.
Absolutely. I think grief is, and I know, it was interesting. I had a question a little while back where someone had said to me, what makes you such an expert on grief? And I've always said I'm not an expert in nothing. I've got a little bit of knowledge that I share with anybody who asks. And I tend to come from different angles and maybe a little bit different to other mediums. But I was asked, what is it that makes you an expert, or what is it that makes you experienced in it? I've always said that there's a lot of people out there that have got mediumship abilities, but they've never really experienced grief, or they've never really experienced heartache and trauma. And there's a big difference when you're actually reading from someone. There's a lot of people get held on like how good is the message, but not perhaps how impactful is the message. Now, you can impact someone in a negative or a positive fashion, and I think that comes down with a lot of experience. And so I experienced, and I wrote a post this in a grief group that I run, and I've experienced a great deal of grief, a lot of grief through the years. And so I think I've experienced different aspects of it. So I have an empathy with people who are seriously suffering. And I think it's the worst trauma to go through, from losing a sibling to losing a son or a daughter. And grief can have so many labels and so many names and so many descriptions. Grief is completely different to everyone, and everybody suffers in their own way. There's a great Buddhist teacher that I really look up to, and that's a gentleman, a monk called Thich Nhat Hanh. And one thing that always stuck on me is never judge anybody in any way that you can, because you never know the battle that they're facing, and everybody is suffering in their own way and in a different way. And you can't make a judgment on someone because you don't know they're suffering. You haven't got the faintest knowledge of how they're suffering. So it's important to just listen, understand, and be compassionate. And so with that, even through the work that I do with grief, my life is revolved around 3 simple rules, and it's love, forgiveness, and compassion. And that's the way I try to live my life every day, in some way, in service every day. And if I can do that, it's not an easy thing to do, and I don't always probably succeed in it, because we have the humanistic aspect of us. But for me, service and mediumship goes way beyond just giving a simple reading.
It does. There are readings that are entertaining, and then there's also those that are healing. And I just looked at your website, and I thought, this man has integrity. You're not a medium who does the entertaining kind of readings. You're the ones, you do the ones to help the grieving. So I really commend you.
I do. Actually, it's funny. I vet everyone. There's only one time where my guides have come through and said, you really need to do that person a sitting, and then they actually flew in to see me and I gave the sitting, and that was me listening to the other side that it was needed. I actually thought it wasn't needed. But what I tend to say to people is, don't come to me because you've heard I might be a good medium. I'm not the greatest medium in the world. I am fairly evidential as far as I can make out, and as far as my standards go. But if you're only interested in, I went to this person and he's a great medium, then don't bother, because there's thousands and thousands of mediums out there that will do it for a few dollars. There's thousands of mediums out there that will do it to pander their egos. Only come to me if you're seriously grieving, and be prepared to wait, because I have quite a long list. But I tend to I tend to really focus on people who are grieving more. I'm not in it for entertainment. And I refuse to put on, by saying to people that this is by entertainment purposes only, like a lot do. I won't do it because it's not entertainment purposes only. It's for a healing purpose, and it's to help somebody through their grief journey. I've always said, and I teach this, that a medium cannot heal you through grief. And any medium that tells you that they're going to heal you through grief, you want to run, and you want to run as fast as you can, and you don't want to look back. Because a medium can only go on the journey with you through grief. I can only hold your hand, but the journey is a journey that you have inevitably got to make yourself. You've got to learn the lessons of grief, and you've got to learn how your soul learns lessons from grief. It's not for me to take away those lessons. It's just for me to comfort you, take your hand, and carry you when the burden is too heavy, so that you may be able to learn and move through that process in a most beneficial and divine way as possible.
Yes. And I think personally that for me, it was grief that was the catalyst that woke me up to go on my own spiritual journey.
I think that, in as you know, I'm been reading your book and things, and I think that's very important. There's a lot of people. I don't read a lot of modern books because you tend to know there's a lot of people writing. It's more for getting themselves out there, get the name out there and stuff. And then you meet authors like yourself who their catalyst has been some form of grieving, the grief process, being thrown into turmoil of something they can't understand. And what I found fascinating about you, and I love this, I love it when a skeptic turns into a non-skeptic, because it's almost like that seed has been sown, and you then are on your own journey. And in that own journey, in that process, you learn so much. You touch so many hearts along the way. And it's not about how long the journey is. It's about how many hearts you touch, how many souls you touch, and how many smiles you put on people's faces. And I think that's important for anybody who takes up their instruction or their journey on grief, is that they look at themselves and they realize that they're on a journey. And maybe it's the hardest thing to do. Maybe it's the hardest thing to accept that your loved one is not around you in the physical. But if we can manage to get people to try and understand about the reality of the continuation of your consciousness and life after death, then we can maybe then educate them on a new journey and maybe make it more exciting for them. And I think that's a fundamental basis that people need to maybe try and look at.
Excellent words. Jock, how did you... Well, when you grew up, obviously you didn't become a priest, but
no, thank God, no, I didn't.
And not knocking the priesthood, but how did you end up getting into mediumship?
Well, it was really strange because I had experiences in the army as well. I'd see old soldiers, and my intuition was always very strong. I just always knew things, and whether you understand it as being a psychic or a medium or anything, like you, I am actually very, very skeptical, and I think that's a good thing. And I remember one day, it was in Scotland, and my friend had said to me, "I'm going to go and see this psychic woman. Her name was Rachel, and can you give me a lift?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll give you a lift." I said, "I don't believe in all that mumbo jumbo or anything. That's all a kind of rip off." And I was older in my years, but I was still very spiritual. I always prayed, and I think, curiosity killed the cat. It got the better of me. And I went to see this, and I never went to see the woman. I went to take my friend to see the woman, Alison, and she went in, and I was waiting outside, and reading a book or on the phone as usual. And she came out and she says, "You come out up here." And I was like, "No, I'm not paying for a reading. I'm not coming in for a reading." And she says, No, I want to speak to you. And she sat me down and she held my hand. My father passed very young, and I never got to say goodbye to him. And my grief hit me much, much later because we didn't have a great relationship, and we fell out before he passed, and it was just a terrible thing. But I remember she just held my hand and she said, "I have your father here," and she gave me his name, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute, I wasn't expecting this. And then she told me things that just were out of this world. I just couldn't understand it. And she knew things about me that were very, very private and about my father. And she wanted to bring that close for me, because she knew that I needed to look at it differently. And then she said to me, she says, "You've been a natural medium ever since you were a child." And she gave me a ring, and she sat me down, and she said, "Hold this ring." And she talked me through some things, and she says, "I want you to just shut your eyes and tell me what you see in your mind." And I was thinking imagination, and I started to tune in, and I brought her husband through. And she said, I just explained it, and then she just said, "You've been a natural medium all your days, and you're going to be called to service very soon." And she gave me a time. She said, within this period of time, you'll have a visitation, and it'll be from someone on the other side. Well, goodness. Cut a very long story short. I did have that visitation, and it frightened the living daylights out of me. My father appeared to me in my apartment, just as I would be looking at you. Never said anything, nothing big or anything else, but and I wasn't drinking. I've never been a heavy drinker or anything like that, and I've never taken drugs or anything. And this was quite unusual for me. And I knew, it was very clear it was my dad, and all he did was smile. And at that moment, something lifted between us, and I was really scared. And so I ran down, the next day, I went down to this local spiritualist church that I used to call the Spooky Church. And it was really weird because I could hear singing, but the doors were all locked and everything else. And I rattled the door because I knew I had to get in there. And this old woman opened the door, and she looked at me and she says, "Oh, it's yourself, son. We've been waiting on you. You better come in." Well, that, of course, frightened the living daylights out of me.
Yes.
And I hid up the back, and I went up to the back seats, and I was trying to just hide away, and there was loads of people in there. And there was this, and I can't remember their names, but there was this man and this woman, and they were on the platform, they were husband and wife, and she came straight to me and she says, "That gentleman who's just come in," and she told me, she said, "I got somebody here from the spirit world for you." And she said, she gave me evidence that was, amazing. And she said, "You'll be standing here. There's the spiritual doors that are opening for you, and you'll be standing up here." Incredible. And that was my opening into what spiritualism was.
Wow. You'll be called to service very soon. And you were.
And I met my wife, and everything just seemed to then take its own direction. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like I was seeking anything. It was like I was being pushed in the direction. I studied Reiki. I became a Reiki master. I studied as much as I could. I went back almost to my younger days and studied everything I could possibly study, from ancient trance teachings to anything I could get my hands on, I studied. And a woman took me under her wing by the name of Helen Gordon, and she would take me to old Scottish castles, and she would take me out, and she would kind of teach me. And then that would be a kind of private, personal thing. And then I was in the spiritualist church, and I made friends there, and then it just went on from there. Before I knew it, I went into I was really interested in crystals, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to get myself an amethyst crystal. And I went to this crystal store in the north of Scotland, and I saw this business card, and it was Joanne Pugsley, psychic medium, Wales and running courses and things. And I thought, I'm going to go on that. I'm going to just for the sheer fun of it, I'm going to go on and see how we do. Well, I've always been a very suspicious person, and I remember phoning Joanne and saying, I'm interested in you, but I want to meet you first. I want to meet you and see if you're the real deal, And I was quite cheeky about it. But we met up and we had a coffee, and I went on. I said, okay, I'm going to go. I went on her course that she was running, and as I pulled up that day, she took me into the hall, and there was all these other people that was there, and she said, "Don't you be giving out any messages. I know you're a medium, and you just sit here and learn." And I was very, very rough with it, and the ego was burning from what I had learned. And of course, I failed, and I gave out messages, and I got into trouble. So I credit my wife then for taking me, as I've said before, a piece of coal that was black, unpolished, ignorant, not understanding the spirit world is the way I should have, and she really turned me into a diamond.
Oh, how did you meet your wife?
I met her on that psychic development course.
Oh.
She was the teacher.
Oh, how wonderful.
She was the teacher. She was and we fell in love, and we got married, and we demonstrated. We got married in the Spirit Source Church in Swansea. We served the churches up there, and we served our own church. We ran our own church in Scotland, and we had our own circle, and we developed in Home Circle, and we run our centre, the Centre of Spiritual Light, and we loved it. We just kept on, serving spirit and doing demonstrations, and then the USA called, and we came over. We got married. We had which was we before we got married. Actually, we had a bad car accident, and actually, I had an NDE. And I don't normally. I'm very skeptical of NDEs and OBEs and things. As you'll realize from when a lot of what I do, I'm hardened evidence. I need evidence. So even though I've had experiences like that, I've never been really open because I can't come back with hardened evidence from things I experienced. But I remember in the car crash that we had, I basically had that experience, and I saw everything from outside my body. I was up, and I then woke up in the car. We were taken to hospital. We got married. We came over. We weren't supposed to come over to America because Jo was still in a cast. She had not a broken bone from the car accident. She got a broken bone from just after the car accident, falling down the stair. And everybody was laughing and said that she was like a runaway bride, and she was she was trying to run away. So then I came over on our honeymoon, and I got very ill. I got rushed into hospital on honeymoon, and I ended up, and it was really strange because we ended up in the villages in Florida. When we landed, we had nowhere to go because our hotels that we had booked in Florida, some had gone wrong. It was the room that we got in was full of cockroaches. We had nowhere to go. Jo was in a wheelchair, and we met this old couple, and they just picked us up, and they says, "Well, we'll take you home to our place, and then we'll try and get you somewhere to stay." And we'll try and we just got married, and it was amazing because we were so tired, and we got to this old woman's house, and we went, and it was Danny and Mimi, and they put us up, and we woke up the next morning, and Sandra, there was angel statues everywhere.
Nice.
Everywhere there was. And they helped us, and we stayed in the villages for like 6-7 months. They helped us to get a little place to stay, and we were kind of adopted pensioners with our trolleys and stuff. And so, we had a bit of a journey, and it was there in the villages that I wrote my first book, Powers of the Sixth Sense.
Brilliant.
So,
And how long have you been in the States now?
Now it'll be nearly 7 years.
7 years. And you're in the Carolinas now. You're not no
North
longer.
Carolina.
Yeah.
It's absolutely gorgeous here. I love the mountains. I was in Florida before, but it was so flat and humid. And for a Scotsman, that's not a good thing.
Right.
Humidity kind of kills you out there. And I always had a saying, if it flies, it wants to kill you in Florida, and if it swims, it wants to kill you, and if it crawls, it wants to kill you. So it's best not being there.
There are some big bugs for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. I want to ask you just a question on your
Yeah.
mediumship, only because this caught my eye. I was
Mm.
on your website, jockbrocas.com, and there were some testimonials from people. And someone wrote that you were highly evidential with names, street names, personal details, and details in foreign languages. What the heck is that? What?
Yes. I can't say that it's me.
No.
I think it's maybe an aspect of trance, but I have had people that have came for sittings, and I'm very clairaudient. So I kind of, as people understand clairaudience, I hear with my mind, and sometimes I've objectively heard outside, but when I hear it, I know that it's completely separate from me. So there's times where I've actually given sittings, and I gave street names, and I don't want to say I don't like to say I, because I want to really give the credit to
To the
Spirit.
spirit, yeah.
Spirit has been able to impress on me how to say it and what to say, and that an example. I've heard names, street names, places in Russian, Italian, Spanish, Czechoslovakian, and German, I believe, and that's, I don't speak any languages.
That's fantastic.
So I just have, and it doesn't always happen, and I
Right.
can't claim. And every one of my testimonials, I'm very particular. They're real, It's I wouldn't put anything up there for the sake of it, because I'm so dedicated to helping people with grief. And this particular Russian woman that came to see me, she had lost her both sons in a terrible incident in Russia, and she was grieving, and she was really bad with it. And I didn't know how it was going to go, because I was having a problem with understanding it anyway. But I just trusted Spirit, and I just give what I heard, and I just opened up, and I said, I'm calling on my divine power and my divine authority, and make it happen. And it happened, and it's happened on a number of occasions. I've also given information in Gaelic as well, which is really strange, because I don't speak Gaelic, even though I'm from the Highlands of Scotland. I don't speak Gaelic, but it's few and far between. And I can't say that it's me, and it doesn't make me any different from any other medium or special in any way. It just means that Spirit on that occasion has been able to impress on me in a different way. And I think people would call it xenoglossy. The scientists of our era would call it xenoglossy. But I think xenoglossy is more when they're holding long conversations, etc., in foreign languages that they don't speak. I can just say that, clairaudiently, I've heard those languages, and I've just said what I've heard, and it's worked.
Oh,
So
talk
I
about.
can't really take that on board.
No, I get it. You're like the telephone, and you're just repeating what's coming in.
Yeah. I'm just, I'm raising my vibration, and hopefully, I believe that what makes us a good medium is how we live a clean life. And that doesn't necessarily mean wearing caftans and sandals and goodness knows what else, but trying to live a clean life is being mindful of your present moment, of being aware of other people, and being aware of continually trying to strive for divinity in all aspects of your life. Now, it doesn't stop me from having a wee dram, and it doesn't stop me, I don't smoke or anything, but, I'm not a golden child or whiter than white. It's just that I think daily my life is trying to exemplify the life that Christ would have lived, or the life that anybody who aspires to some form of divinity would try and live. And so I'm always watching my thoughts, and I'm always watching how I react, and I pray regularly and deeply. I take my time.
That's great. Great words. You had brought up the word trance earlier,
Yeah.
just briefly.
Yeah.
Are you a medium that does trance work, or?
I don't do it publicly in my home circles that we've had. Yes, I've done trance. I would say that every medium who is a medium or claims mediumship abilities is always a developing medium.
Yes.
I'm continually developing that side of me. I'm striving more and more to develop, other aspects of my mediumship, which I hope will be, independent voice. But, since I've moved so many times in America, finding the right circle, we've had people that have come and joined our circles. And for me, as I said to you, and as you probably know, evidence for me is more than anything. So I have a big issue with channeling and trance. I think they're two separate issues and two separate things. And I know that when I've seen really good trance mediumship or witnessed it, that person is almost their consciousness is separated, their faculties is gone, and the spirit control is being able to manipulate and utilize their consciousness, their physical expression. And so I expect some form of evidence. And when I was I'm still developing, but it's another thing when people are trying to get to know their guides. Anybody will take a guide, and I've always said there's a danger to that, because you tell your kids, don't eat sweets, don't take sweets from strangers. And sometimes when we're developing mediumship, we're just like those children, and we often take sweets from strangers because we have this, I don't know, this rose tinted look that, we get some form, a little bit of evidence, or we think is evidence from the other side, that then is our guide. So I've always been very aware of that. And I remember when I first met my team, I was totally out. I was in what people would understand as deep trance. I don't remember anything from it. I came round, and in our circle, they said who my guide was, and I thought it was a lot of rubbish. I thought they were making it up, and I thought there was some aspect of me that had maybe read a book or something and had said this, and we couldn't. But the evidence, when they went away and they researched, the evidence actually stood up. And in the next session, the evidence was then pieced together with each person. And our circle, in our circle, they had to, find that out and find out who it was. And I was still very, no, I don't believe in it. It's got to be hard for me. You've got to give me real evidence. Yes. But then there came a point where you just have to accept it. The evidence is overwhelming. So I've always been wanting to tell people, even with your guides and developing, you have to have a number of pieces of evidence that all puts together like a jigsaw puzzle before you can really readily accept anything.
Yeah. So someone speaks through you?
Yes.
Pretty cool.
And I've always said, here's the thing, there's a lot of mediums they'll get it and instantly they want to go out into the public domain.
Right.
I don't really like that. It's their own part of their life, and I won't judge them for it. But for me, I will continue to develop in the home circle to such times as Spirit then say that we want to share this knowledge. And that'll be whenever they decide, not when I decide. So I'm very private, actually, and I'm private with my work as well. I tend, I'm actually rebuilding my website at the moment, but I tend not to promote myself a great deal. And I don't kind of push out. And I look at different aspects of my studies and mediumship work and afterlife studies and things. And I'm my worst enemy for promoting myself. I'd rather promote other people than myself. So I'm very private in my work because I believe it's for me, it's a vocation. It's not a job.
Yes, I get that completely. Can you just mention what the difference is between channeling and trance? I get the trance.
Okay,
but
so for me, and this is, and I'm sorry if I upset people, but for me, there's what people would understand as light trance and deep trance and channeling. Channeling is like inspirational speaking for me. When someone is there and they kind of move themselves into an altered state and they are impressed, maybe they say that they're, when a lot of people say they're channeling Jesus or they're channeling something for me, I mean, you could start and channel now. You could just go into a meditative state and just say what you're feeling. For me, that's like inspiration. It doesn't hold much in the way of evidence for me, and really a great deal of what comes out is actually coming from the mind and the knowledge of that particular person, the medium. So I don't look at light trance as being light trance. I have, in my mind and in my understanding and the way that I'm happy with it, is there's channeling and then there's deep trance, and there's nothing in between. And I might upset people, and it's because in deep trance I want evidence. I want evidence of loved ones, or I want to hear from spirit that I know through my own discernment that information and that knowledge is so more highly attuned and highly evolved that it couldn't possibly come from an individual's wisdom and knowledge. Now, I know there's a certain aspect of, and you know, Spirit Silver Birch would often say that he would utilize the vocabulary and the understanding of his vessel, but there comes a time when spirit is able to control, and they have such a control over the medium that they're able to impress their own knowledge and their part of their consciousness through that medium, because they've got such a level of control. And I think it's something that has to be developed over a very long period of time. There's some great trance mediums out there. And there's some good channelers that have got good information, but for me, it doesn't do nothing for me, the channeling. It really doesn't. And you know, there's fantastic direct voice mediums like Leslie Flint back in the day.
Yes.
You know, you've got, we don't have that so much anymore, you know. We have, you know, people trying to aspire to be another Silver Birch or to be another Morris Barbanel. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes we just got to take our, you know, and I think, you know, we've got to be careful as well. I'm a great believer that, you know, there's a yin and a yang, there's light and dark. You wouldn't know pain if you didn't know health. Yes. You know, you wouldn't know light if you didn't know dark. So we've got to be careful. We can't just give ourselves up to anything on the other side. You know, it's also very dangerous. And so I think it takes a long period of development, a long period of sacrifice to get to the point where we develop the relationships enough where spirit can actually utilize us for the means that they want us. You know, and there's few and far between out there. I've seen more bad mediumship and more bad trance than I have seen genuine.
And the genuine I have seen, and I've also seen not genuine, but to my core, when I see genuine, I hear messages of service that are, I've seen loved ones step in talking to their children.
And you're discerning it in your own, because we all have a divine aspect of ourselves. We're all divine in nature. I mean, we've heard that saying so many times, Sandra, you know, we're spirit in human form.
Yes.
So there's an element of our divinity that just knows. It's almost like going home. So when you're in the presence of a really great medium that is able to allow themselves and give themselves freely to be controlled with love from the other side, we instantly know and can feel that. And we instantly also know when it's not genuine because it doesn't resonate in our vibration.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm looking at the clock. If we go over a little over an hour, is that okay with you?
Yeah, fire away. I don't mind.
Okay, because there's so much. I want to touch on a few things, because you had said that, well, like me, you're someone who likes to promote other people, not about self-promotion. Yes. But I'd like to find out what ASSMPI is, and also the Otherside Press. Could you share about those?
Yes. Well, the ASSMPI actually came from a trance address in our circle many, many, many years ago. And of course, Spirit didn't come through and say, hey, we want you to start up an organization called the ASSMPI. They basically come through and they say, we're concerned about standards, and, we would like to have another voice, and we would like you to set up an organization. So I thought, okay, I can do this, because I'm very adept at online stuff and building sites and marketing and things like that. I actually have a marketing company, and I thought, okay, I can do that, and I know the exact person who can run it. It was Robin Foy. So I decided, I spoke to Robin, and I said, Robin, this has come through in our circle, and Spirit wants us to do this, and I think you should head it, and I'll be in the background, and I'll just kind of get everything ready, and then you do it. And he said, no, he said, I'm feeling that you should be the person doing this, and I'll support you. I said, well, you'll be part of it. Yes. Well, why don't you do it? And so we kind of went back and forth. I was trying to convince him. So he says, well, look, Spirit have asked you, you've got to do it. So I said, okay, right. So then I rattled my cage a little bit, and I thought, right, I'm going to ask Kai Mugi. So I'm going to get this.
You're funny, man.
Kai, you be the head of this, and you do this and everything else, and get involved with us. And he said the same as Robin, but he would support, and he would be involved with it. And I was going through lists of people. I was trying to find anybody and everybody I could possibly find. At one point, I even before I got to even speak to Stuart Alexander, I'd written to him and tried to get in touch with him, and that didn't work. And then I just didn't know what to do. And I thought, well, I may as well start it. And so I think when I started it, it wasn't really taken seriously. Our organization wasn't taken seriously. And I don't blame people for that, because they think it's another fly-by-night organization. But I kept in my mind, well, Jesus was a carpenter. And why did why was the disciples chosen? They weren't chosen because how great they were. They were fishermen. They were normal people. So maybe I can do the job. Maybe, Spirit chooses a normal person. They don't have to be well known and famous. And then so I started to develop it. And it was very difficult. And it's been a long struggle. It's been hard. It's taken a lot. I had to take a sabbatical. I had to come out of doing public dems and all that, and just to concentrate on this. And it's been a lot of years of development. I'm praying to Spirit to get the right people. You learn along the way. You learn about the wrong people, and but I've always focused on one thing that I remember Spirit wanted. They wanted it to be from Spirit, to develop Spirit. And it had to basically to be there, to be standards, to set standards, to keep it high, and to bring Spirit back to the circle, bring Spirit back to mediumship, and to try and negate negativity out there. So for me, it's almost been like, well, that's an impossible thing to do, and how do you do it? And I remember, I'm not sure if it was Robin that said to me, he says, look, somebody's got to do it. Why not you? Why not you?
Right.
And I thought, well, okay, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. Let's go for it. But I never wanted the hat. I really didn't want the hat. I wanted somebody else to carry that torch. But I'm very proud of it now, and we're here to stay. And we have, one desire is to have open arms, to welcome everybody no matter who they are, but to keep our standards very, very high, and to serve with an open heart, with love, compassion, and forgiveness. And I think slowly and surely we are starting to make a difference, and not only in mediumship, but other, in people's lives. And people are starting to volunteer and come forward, and we've got a long, long, long way to go, but we're primarily an organization that is just interested in research and standards, and we've just recently had Dr. Palmer, who's just joined us and signed up a document to come work with us and spearhead a new team. We've got another doctor who's going to be joining us shortly, who I'm going to be speaking to this week, who approached us. And I think to just develop real standards for professional mediums. You see, there's a lot of, and you know this as well as I do, there's a lot of people who claim to be mediumistic that are not. And there's a lot of people that get hoodwinked. And here's an important thing that I want to say to people. And I'm going to use an example. If mediums are so caught up with how accurate they are, one word can throw someone grieving into turmoil. And it may be very flippant in saying something. It could be as simple as, I've got your husband here, his name is Harry, he's coming through. He's not been happy about you lately. And the person who's receiving the message doesn't hear, I've got your husband, got your Harry, he loves you, da-da-da-da. She hears, he's not happy with me. Mm-hmm. That's it. So we need to train our mediums to be able to discern, and that's a lot of development and a lot of understanding, working with spirit, and how to deliver, and how to be able to transmute the right thing, and to be able to discern what spirit's trying to put across, because you're a filter. You're like a water filter. You're taking it in dirty. You want it to come out clean. And I've seen mediums that have caused more grief to people grieving just because they're untrained and don't know, have never developed long enough, don't have much experience in life, and for them it's just about how accurate they can get, or maybe get a name, or can they get this. It's not about how accurate the evidence is. And everybody's evidence is different. One person's evidence is another person's failure. But how you deliver it is more important. Because spirit want to give you a job, and you want to serve them to the best of your ability. And that means not hurting someone and not making them think, my God, I've had so many messages from people that have been, I came out of that reading feeling worse than I've ever felt in my life. Because whilst the medium was reading for them and they thought it was kind of just flippantly pass something across and a bit funny, they don't realize that how that person's grief is building in them, and how the message, however it's distilled, can destroy that person and make them, fall into even a deeper cavern of grief. So I think we need a lot more training of our mediums, not just in the evidential side, but in the empathic side, if I'm saying the right word. To be able to understand grief and to learn about it almost from, you need to have some experience. That's my own personal opinion.
Yeah. A
young kid we could stand in a workshop and I could teach a young 20-year-old kid, an 18-year-old kid to give a good reading and it would be accurate. But that doesn't make them a medium, Sandra. I think medium is a vocation and it's a journey you take. It's a burden that you also take on, because it's not an easy one. Because you have a great deal of responsibility. And I think mediums need to wake up to the responsibility that they have.
Yes.
The responsibility to spirit and the responsibility to those that are grieving.
Definitely. Yeah. Integrity.
It's not about psychic parties.
No. Jock, what is the Otherside Press?
Well, that is an online magazine that we started to educate and to teach, and to have, articles about mediumship and afterlife. And we've kind of gone through different iterations. At one point we were into UFOs and angels and all that kind of stuff. But then, myself and the rest of the board, we decided we're going to stick to what we know, and that's the afterlife. And it's growing. And we have a fantastic readership. There's lots of readers that love it and enjoy it. I have to be honest. For anybody who's listening, yes, I know there's not been a lot of articles on it recently, but here's the reason. The reason you haven't seen anything recently is because we're actually now ready to change to a full color print and subscription magazine that will be available for people. And so the online magazine, the Otherside Press, will become more of an online different articles and different things that will go on there more readily available as and when people, send them in. but we are going to be developing into a full print with the blessing of spirit, and hopefully we can raise enough funds to do so. Full print, full color, digitized online magazine with great writers and regular monthly exposés and articles on mediumship and research and standards and mediums and grieving and grief. You know, I write a column in it called the Grief Journey Through Grief, and I don't write the articles from any perspective of any books that I've written. I think Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is great. I've read a lot of different grief books, but my articles tend to spark from something I've heard or a feeling or an awareness that I've been given or something that is intuitively come to me. So I tend to let spirit write the articles, if you like, and hopefully that they'll touch someone and help someone. And if one person reads it and one person's touched by it, I think we've done our job.
Oh, definitely. And congratulations for it turning into a online magazine subscription. It's all fantastic because there's not too many of them out.
No, we've got a long way to go, and you know we're getting there. I mean, that's why one of the reasons why everyone's been so quiet. You know, you don't realize that to turn something in a proper governed proper magazine that people can hold in their hand or can read on their right. It's not just about putting a PDF up there. You know, it's got to have the right writers, the right energy,
yes,
the right people, and we're starting to develop a fantastic team in the ASSMPI, and more people are stepping forward. And I prayed to Spirit because it was getting overwhelming for me. It was taking a great deal of time and a lot of decisions in there that I didn't want to make as well. And I'm a great person for compassion. And I think that's another thing that a lot of people don't understand. To develop compassion isn't just about an empathic way of feeling for someone. It's also about wisdom and courage, because you can be compassionate for someone that everybody may think doesn't deserve compassion. And I think that's emulated in some of the great saints, and Jesus and Buddha and all of those lives. You can learn something about compassion from. And I've always said that if you can look someone who everybody else believes is truly bad or truly evil, and you can put your arms around them and still be compassionate and feeling for that plight, then you're kind of learning compassion. It's more than just a feeling for me. So I try to analyze and develop my compassionate side every day in my life.
Yeah, it's something we can all do.
Yeah, and it's not easy. And I think no matter how much we try, it's a very hard thing to try and emulate, because you almost have to look introspectively, and what may not sit with you psychologically or may not sit with you in a material world, you have to fight against that in order to make that divinity rise and to see the compassion in something that may almost be totally against what anybody else thinks.
The best fortune cookie I ever got, the message, Jock, was the best place to stand in an argument is on the other person's side. And
that's fantastic.
Yes, and it just speaks so much to really being in somebody's shoes and really having compassion for them. We have no idea the struggles people are dealing with. No idea.
We have no idea what, that no matter what someone does in their life, I've always believed that we don't know their full story, and we don't. I don't know. Did you see I'm not sure what it was called. Did you see I think it was called The Shed. There was a film that came out recently, and I went. The
Shack.
To see,
yeah.
The Shack.
I haven't seen it.
No, The Shed. That's it.
That's all right.
Shack. Did you watch that?
No, not yet.
Oh, Sandra, you've got to watch it. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Okay.
There's a lot of people coming out of the cinema and I don't get it. That was rubbish. But it is phenomenal because there is every conceivable spiritual lesson in that film that you can think of.
Oh.
There is compassion. There is love. There is forgiveness. There is abuse. there is the person that wrote that book, that was divinely inspired. And to watch, and it's quite funny in some of it. You've got Jesus standing on a boat, and he's saying, well, why don't you just make the fish come? And he's like, well, what's the fun in that? You know, if you look at that film as an observer as a participant rather than an observer, you get to feel it in a different way. And I think there's some great lessons in that film, and I would urge anybody to go and see it. And if you've seen it before, try and look at it from participate in it. You know, try and find those hidden messages. Try and find that emotion that's hidden within it, because it really teaches you a great deal about love, forgiveness, and compassion. It's a phenomenal film. And I'm not ashamed to say it, but I was crying my eyes out.
I'll watch it this afternoon. Yeah, I've seen it, but I didn't know. I mean, I see the previews, but I didn't know what it was. And so.
Oh, it's really good. I mean, God is played by a black woman, and she's hilarious. She's brilliant. And just the way that the story interweaves, if you look at, you will find great afterlife revelations and great spiritual revelations, and with not a dogmatic perception within it.
Excellent.
So anybody who's listening to this, go and watch it with different eyes.
The Shack.
It's amazing.
The Shack. Jock, can you mention what the Afterlife Connect is? I know you've got the website afterlifeconnect.com.
Afterlife Connect is owned by the ASSMPI. It helps us to raise funds. So it's so I have a great deal of skill in marketing, and what I wanted to do was to bring a grief community together with professional mediums and churches, because churches are always complaining they don't have enough bums on seats, and people are falling away from them. And part of the problem is they don't know how to make themselves open and aware for people to find them, or to even reach out to a new community, you know. So I developed Afterlife Connect as an educational grief community, and a marketing platform for professional mediums. We don't always let every medium in. We've turned away tons of mediums. It's not a directory. It is a content marketing platform for mediums. It's a place for professional mediums to be able to be contactable to the public, to be able to help them get found a lot easier. But my biggest passion for it is to educate those who are grieving, to give them a community, and it's building slowly. And my other passion for it is to allow a forum, a platform that churches can join and reach out to a community that needs them, where the churches can have a professional online, if you like, mini website or an online connection without having to have all the costs of web design and hosting and all the issues that go with it. So it's free for the public to join. There's a lot of articles, and there's a podcast as well that I run called Signs of Spirit, and there's other meditations from other mediums, and you know, it's a great thing, and it's a great thing for mediums to be found for people who need them. We only charge a fee to professional mediums who are out there, you know, charging for their services. But what I'll say is that fee helps us in the ASSMPI. It helps to raise funds. A lot of charities are always putting their hands out for something, but really don't give a great deal in return. We want, we're after people to give us money to run charities. So my belief is that I've got to give the community something tangible so that they'll see that we're raising funds in the right way. And so anything that we earn from Afterlife Connect goes, and we don't earn a great deal, it goes straight into ASSMPI to help us develop and to build and grow. The public, it's free, and for churches, it's free.
Excellent. I just one more thing I wanted to ask you is I was stumbling on iTunes and I saw a podcast with your name on it called Signs of Spirit.
Yes.
And it sounds like you've got a couple of several really good episodes. Loved One's
Yes.
Meditation?
That's a meditation I did for someone who was having a problem
Mm-hmm.
of making a connection with a loved one. And I've taught in many courses, and I've taught lots of different. I've got lots of videos that I teach on my wife's course, and I've taught many workshops. I do a lot of workshops, but I do them privately. I don't advertise them much, and it's kind of small and unique. But what I did from the Afterlife Connect community, I wanted to give them something to listen to and to learn from. And so I decided to do a 10 podcast lessons, which I've only done about 6 or 7. I got way behind because I got very ill there for a while. But I'll keep doing them, and I'm going to keep doing different lessons. And I'm actually probably going to start looking at different aspects of grief and things in it. And once I think we did dreams, and we've got the next one as well. So Signs of Spirit, I hope, will grow. It's there free for anybody who wants to listen to it. It's what little knowledge, again, that I have to share. And I think I've interviewed a couple of people that I respect on there, including my wife. In fact, my wife and I had a great interview. We did it, you wouldn't think we were husband and wife, actually, because I did it very professionally, or I tried to.
Oh, great.
And I interviewed my wife all about vibration. And it was a fantastic interview. And I think on iTunes or SoundCloud, that's had nearly 1,000 hits or something on it, people listening to it. So I'll keep doing it just to share knowledge and share wisdom. It's difficult to try and balance the amount that I have.
Yes.
To be able to do it more regularly. But the next lesson that I've got part 2 of the dream lesson that I'm going to put out, and then the next one I'm doing is on forgiveness. And really that comes from, I have a grief group as well. And for anybody who's grieving, you're in it, Sandra, and I don't let a lot of people in it. In fact, people that were trying to advertise it, I don't even advertise myself. I don't put anything in there. But as a community that I have on Facebook, and I opened it's the Afterlife Connect Grief Community, and I opened it as a place for people who are grieving to be able to have a voice and to learn, and not to be jumped upon by people trying to give them messages and all sorts of things, because there's millions of groups out there, there's millions of mediums that will do that, But there's times when people just want to express themselves and they want answers. And so I opened it from a woman who came to me and said she had a really negative experience. And so I started it started with one person, 2 people, and before now people get recommended to come and join it. And I think I learn a lot from that community. That gives me a great deal of direction and how I can teach and share knowledge. And so for me, it's almost like a teaching platform for me and for the other mediums, as well as a place for those who are grieving to come and ask questions and be on the grief journey with people who understand and who have an empathy.
Yes.
And I'm going to keep it that way. I'm not going to let it be tainted. It's not my community. It's a grief community, and it's for those that are grieving.
Oh, thank you so much. For our listener now, Jock says he's got his little bit of knowledge. It's quite a bit. And just in the description of this episode, all the links to his website, the ASSMPI, the Afterlife Connect Grief Community, Otherside Press, his podcast on iTunes, in the description of this episode are all of those links, just to make it easy for you to follow up and find out more. Jock, thank you so much for being our guest. Any closing words or anything you're itching to say that I didn't ask? And I forgot to say this. Here we go.
No, absolutely. My only closing word would be, there's 3 words that I teach everyone: perceive, believe, and conceive. That's the secret to life.
Can you just mention a little bit about each one of those?
Perceive what it is you have in your heart.
Okay.
Believe that Spirit have given it to you, and conceive it into reality.
Oh, I love it.
Whether that is something material you want, or whether it's going through the grief journey, or whether it's developing your soul in a different direction, whether it's being of service to someone in mankind, perceive it, believe spirit or God, whatever you follow, has given it, and then conceive that into reality and be of service. That's all.
My mom always says, make it happen. That's
exactly. That's
great.
An easier way to say it.
Yeah, it's so great. Well, thank you, Jock,
Sandra,
for being our guest.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. I'm delighted to be on your show.
Oh, now we have new friends with each other. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I should probably get you on Signs of Spirit and we'll talk about your book when we get through these lessons.
Sure. I'd love to.
Absolutely. I think you've got a lot of wisdom to share as well. And you've got a great story as well. And you'll hear more about Sandra and I'm sure in the future. It's been awesome speaking to you, Sandra. I'm so glad that we touched base, and I hope this episode helps people or gives them a little bit of a different insight.
Yeah, I know it will. And it has for me, and also to our listener, Jock has written 3 books, and I think you've even got a new one on the way. I've got the links in this description.
Yes, I have a new one on the way. It's kind of controversial.
We love controversy. It gets people to think. It's all good.
Absolutely.
It's all good. Well, thank you for being our guest, and to our listener, thank you for spending, just over an hour with Jock Brocas and myself. And a few reminders. The home base for this radio show is WeDon'tDieRadio.com. You get all kinds of free goodies there. And also now we're up to 240 something episodes. So you can go back and find each and every one if you'd like. In September is the upcoming Afterlife Symposium. If you'd like to join me there or find out more, you can go to afterlifesymposium.org. So in closing, my name is Sandra Champlain, and I'm always so delighted that I get to be your host on We Don't Die Radio. For me personally, I do believe that life is an education for the soul, and that every one of our lives on earth right now is important. I love forgiveness and compassion, perceive, believe, conceive. It's all good. You are at the perfect place in your journey. There's so much more. And what really resonates for me in this interview is how important being of service is. So I want to thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.